J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class, and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Miss Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mr. Alex Gerard Peterson of Vienna, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Jessica Kawana Sharp Lively of Cordell, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Bridget Nicole Thompson Fullwood of Pitts, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Marjorie Leverson Green of Cordell, Georgia. The family of Mr. L.C. Butts of Quitman, Georgia, and Cordell, Georgia. The family of Mr. Michael George Johnson of Americus, Georgia. The family of Master Malik Jacoby Smith of Albany, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mr. Alex Gerard Peterson, age 37, of 21499 Highway 27th West in Vienna, Georgia, died Sunday, September 12th at his residence in Vienna, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Alex Gerard Peterson was held Sunday, September 19th, graveside at the Macedonia Baptist Church Cemetery, Drayton Community, Vienna, Georgia. The Reverend Louis Burden officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Miss Elizabeth Peterson of Vienna, Georgia, his beloved father, Mr. Will Hudson Sr., and his wife, Mrs. Margaret Hudson of Cordell, Georgia. His beloved sisters, Mrs. Tanya Hudson, Mrs. Rochella Singleton, Mrs. Jaquella Singleton, Miss Natalie Cross, Miss April Cross, Miss Daniela Cross, and Miss Ronisha Grace and her husband Johnny Grace, all of Cordell, Georgia. Miss Victoria Hudson of Texas, Mrs. Sharita Glenn and her husband Greg Glenn of Vienna, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Rodriguez Peterson and his wife, Mrs. Tamika Peterson, Mr. Will Hudson Jr., and Mr. Ricky Hudson, all of Cordell, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Mary Harris and her husband, Mr. Henry Harris, Mr. Wendell Peterson Jr. of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Gloria Peterson of Albany, Georgia, Mr. Walter Peterson of Atlanta, Georgia, and Mr. Johnny Peterson Jr. of Savannah, Georgia. His beloved great aunts and uncles, Mrs. Willie Maud Douglas of Detroit, Michigan, and Miss Marion Peterson of Albany, Georgia. A host of cousins to include his special cousin, Miss Tikara Fullwood and Mrs. Tikara Peterson, both of Cordele, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends to include his special friend, Miss Tasha Tooks of Warner Robins, Georgia, survived Mr. Alex Gerard Peterson, age 37, of 21499 Highway 27, West Vienna, Georgia. Mrs. Jessica Kawana Sharp Lively, age 35, of 1206 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Sunday, September 12, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Jessica Kawana Sharp Lively was held Wednesday, September 22nd, graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Minister Marcus McClintock officiated. Survivors include a loving and devoted husband, Mr. Reginald Lively of Cordele, Georgia. Her loving and precious children, Miss Serenity Lively, Mr. Reginald Lively III, and Miss Sonia Lively, all of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved mother, Miss Helen Franklin, beloved father, Mr. John Shaw. Her loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Kenya Franklin of Miami, Florida, Miss Kimberly Burson of Killeen, Texas, Miss Daphne Sharp of Washington, Miss Cola Chambers of Tampa, Florida, and Miss Kira Edwards of Florida. Mr. Raymond Levant, Jr. of Texas, Mr. John Sharp, Jr., and Mr. Joshua Chambers, both of Miami, Florida. Mr. Jonathan Paula of Hawaii. Her beloved grandparents, Mrs. Dorothy Sharp of Miami, Florida, Mr. Johnny and Mrs. Juanita Tarbert of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved aunts and uncles, Miss Linda Weaver of Waco, Texas, Mrs. Deborah Fisher and her husband, Mr. Gary Fisher of Temple, Texas, Miss Carolyn Sharp, Miss Joanne Sharp, Miss Trina Sharp, Mr. Leon Sharp, all of Miami, Florida. Miss Valerie Sharp and her husband, Mr. Walter Sharp of Walterboro, North Carolina. 4 beloved sisters-in-law, 4 brothers-in-law, a host of nieces, nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include her special friend, Miss Maya Savage of Cordele, Georgia, survived Mrs. Jessica Kawana Sharp Lively, age 35, of 1206 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Bridget Nicole Thompson Fullwood, age 43, of 3484 Georgia Highway 159, Pitts, Georgia, died Wednesday, September 15, at the South Georgia Medical Center in Valdosta, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Bridget Nicole Thompson Fullwood, age 43, was held Wednesday, September 22nd, graveside at the Spring Hill Baptist Church Cemetery in Tippettville, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Charles Cobb Sr., pastor of the Spring Hill Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Octavius Thompson, Mrs. Shanteria Thompson, Mr. Michael Fullwood, Mr. Martavius Fullwood, all of Pitts, Georgia. A beloved grandson, little Kihiris Thompson. Her loving and devoted parents, Mr. Frazier Curtis Thompson Jr. and Mrs. Bobby Jean Lewis Thompson of Pitts, Georgia. One beloved sister, Miss Kendra Lumpkin, and her husband, Mr. Terrell Lumpkin of Haynesville, Georgia. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Frazier Curtis Thompson III and his wife, Mrs. Erica Thompson of Pitts, Georgia, and Mr. Michael Kendrick of Rome, Georgia. Her beloved aunts and uncle, Miss Murtis Lewis of Pitts, Georgia, Miss Mary Ann Lewis of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Louise Bell of Hawkinsville, Georgia, Mrs. Sandra Lane and her husband, Mr. Myron Lane of McDonald, Georgia, Miss Mary Slaughter and Miss Ceola Richley, both of Decatur, Georgia. Deacon M.L. Lewis and his wife, Mrs. Willie Mae Lewis of Rochelle, Georgia. Mr. Edmund Lewis and his wife, Mrs. Barbara Lewis of Jonesburg, Georgia. Mr. Farrell Lewis and his wife, Mrs. Lucille Lewis of Warner Robins, Georgia. Mr. Curtis Lewis and his wife, Mrs. Cynthia Lewis of Stockbridge, Georgia. Mr. Roland Thompson and his wife, Mrs. Annette Thompson of McDonald, Georgia. Mr. Melvin Thompson of Cordell, Georgia. Mr. Carl Thompson and his wife, Mr. Sammy Thompson of both of Pitts, Georgia, and Mr. Foster Thompson of Hampton, Georgia. Her beloved nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include Mr. Stacy Manning of Byronville, Georgia, the father of her children, Mr. Michael Fullwood, and his mother, Miss Vivian Fullwood of Cordell, Georgia. All survive Mrs. Bridget Nicole Thompson Fullwood, age 43, of 3484 Georgia Highway 159, Pitts, Georgia. Mrs. Margaret Levison Green, age 78, of 308 East 13th Avenue, died Wednesday, September 15th at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Marjorie Levison Green, age 78, was held Friday, September 24th, at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordell, Georgia. The Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Miss Teresa Simmons, Miss Roxanne Emmons, and her husband, Mr. Joseph Emmons, Miss Melanie Ramsey, and her husband, Mr. Arnold Ramsey, Miss Elnora Levison, Mr. Robbie Levison, 15 beloved grandchildren, 28 great-grandchildren, a beloved sister, Miss Anita Robinson, and her husband, Mr. Ronald Robinson of Miami, Florida, her beloved brother, Mr. Charlie Riddy, and his wife, Mrs. Loretta Riddy of Deltone, Florida, Mr. Joseph Ridley and his wife, Mrs. Charlene Ridley of Ormond Beach, Florida, Mr. Lorenzo Ridley of Miami, Florida, Mr. Herbert Ridley of Florida, Mr. Selvin Ridley and his wife, Mrs. Pam Ridley of Orlando, Florida, and Mr. James Ridley of Miami, Florida. Her beloved aunts and uncles, a host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Margie Levison Green, age 78, of 308 East 13th Avenue, Cordell, Georgia. Mr. L.C. Butts, age 94, of Quitman, Georgia, died Sunday, September 12th at the Chris Regional Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Cordell, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. L.C. Butts, age 94, was held Saturday, September 25th graveside at the Pleasant Hill Baptist Church Cemetery, Hatley Community, Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Dion Jones officiated. Survivors include a host of loving and devoted nieces and nephews, many great-nieces and great-nephews, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survived. Mr. L.C. Butts, age 94, of Quitman, Georgia. Mr. Michael George Johnson, age 47, of 106 Peggy Ann Drive, Americus, Georgia, died Thursday, September 16, at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus, Georgia. The memorial service for Mr. Michael George Johnson, age 47, was held Saturday, September 25th, at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. His pastor, Reverend Johnny Evans, officiated. The eulogy was delivered by his loving wife, Minister Tanya Watts Johnson. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Minister Tanya Watts Johnson of Americus, Georgia, his loving and caring children, Mrs. Alexandra Watts of Palm Cove, Florida, and Miss Lauren Johnson of Americus, Georgia. His beloved sisters, Mrs. Rosalind Johnson Williams and her husband, Mr. Ronaldo Williams, and Miss Roxanne McClyde, both of Holly Hill, Florida. His beloved brothers, Mr. Willie James Johnson Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Tracy Johnson, and Mr. Eric Johnson and his wife, Mrs. Trina Johnson, both of Holly Hill, Florida. His beloved parents-in-law, the Reverend Jesse and Mrs. Louise Watts of DeSoto, Georgia. His beloved brothers-in-law, Mr. Curtis West and his wife, Mrs. Tammy West of Cordele, Georgia. Mr. James McKenzie and his wife, Mrs. Marianne McKenzie, and Mr. Jesse Watts Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Kim Watts, both of Americus, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends, to include a special friend, Mr. Patrick Reese of Marietta, Georgia, survived. Mr. Michael George Johnson, age 47, of 106 Peggy Ann Drive, Americus, Georgia. Master Malik Jacoby Smith, age 3, of 2203 Beachview Drive, Albany, Georgia, died Sunday, September 19th, at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Egleston Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. The funeral service for Master Malik Jacoby Smith, age 3, was held Saturday, September 25th, graveside at Flora Memory Garden in Albany, Georgia. Minister Carl Anthony Smith officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Miss Tamira Bell and Mr. McQueen Smith of Albany, Georgia. A beloved sister, Lila Camille Smith of Albany, Georgia. His caring brother, Master McQueen Smith Jr. of Albany, Georgia. His loving grandparents, Miss Janice Williams and Miss Vesta Smith of Leesburg, Georgia. Mr. Carlos Relaford of Albany, Georgia. Mr. Jamie Bell of DeLand, Florida. Judge Willie Weaver Sr. of Albany, Georgia, and Miss Veronica Bell of DeLand, Florida. His caring aunts and uncles, Miss Tamara Bell of Albany, Georgia, Mr. Joshua Weaver, Mr. Stephen Weaver of Leesburg, Georgia, Miss Riley Relaford, and Mr. Jamie Bell of Albany, Georgia, a host of great aunts, great uncles, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends, to include Miss Asia Quimbley, Mr. Rondarius Quimbley Sr., and Mr. Rondarius Quimbley Jr. of Albany, Georgia, Miss Catherine Smith, Miss Juanita Franklin, and Mr. Dontavius Thompson. Survived Master Malik Jacoby Smith, age 3, of 2203 Beachview Drive, Albany, Georgia. Again, the family of Mr. Alex Gerard Peterson of Vienna, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Jessica Kawana Sharp Lively of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Bridget Nicole Thompson Fullwood of Pitts, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Margie Levison Green of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. L.C. Butts of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Michael George Johnson of Americus, Georgia, the family of Master Malik Jacoby Smith of Albany, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during the hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you, is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Mr. John Lewis Kitchen, Jr., age 89, of 2608 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 21st, at the Chris Regional Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Mrs. Rosemary Perry and her husband, Brother Dennis Perry of Decatur, Georgia, Mrs. Charsley Roundtree and her husband, Mr. Maurice Roundtree of Cordele, Georgia, and Mrs. Lawana Williams and her husband, Sir Zachary Williams of Vienna, Georgia. 15 beloved grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren, 1 great-great-grandchild, a beloved brother, Deacon Henry Peacock, and his wife, Mrs. Nettie Peacock, his aunts and uncles, Mr. Joseph Hill of Cleveland, Ohio, Mr. Silas Hill, Jr. of Orlando, Florida, Mr. Walter James Hill of New York, and Mrs. Mary Adams of Jacksonville, Florida. A beloved sister-in-law, Mrs. Ida Stefton of Jacksonville, Florida. A host of nieces and nephews, cousins, other relatives, and friends, to include Miss Tracy Brown, Mr. Bill Corners of Cordele, Georgia, Bishop Nobel Kitchens of Valdosta, Georgia, and the members of the Cordele Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. Survived Mr. John Lewis Kitchens, Jr., age 89, of 2608 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. John Lewis Kinchins Jr. will be held today, Sunday, September 26th at 10 a.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. His beloved son-in-law, Minister Dennis Perry, will officiate. Evangelist Joel Avery Fullwood Sr., age 58, of 100 Rebecca Court, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 21st, 2021, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his beloved children, Mr. Joel Avery Fullwood Jr. of Houston County, Georgia, Miss Heaven Taylor and Miss Royalty Taylor and Mr. Sterling Thomas, all of Cordele, Georgia, a beloved granddaughter, little Elijah Jones, his loving and devoted mother, Mother Ethel Fullwood of Cordele, Georgia, his beloved sisters, Miss Krista Bryant, Miss Fonda Fullwood, Miss Meredith Ford, Miss Erica McKenzie, and Miss Shanice Jones, all of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved brother, Mr. Stacy Fullwood, and his wife, Mrs. Brenda Fullwood of Macon, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Missionary Clement Jones of Tampa, Florida, Miss Dorothy Fullwood, Mrs. Taretha Fullwood of Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Mary Hall of Cleveland, Ohio, and Miss Eddie Mae Cook of Cordele, Georgia. His sisters-in-law, Mrs. Brenda Fullwood, Miss Vivian Fullwood, Mrs. Willie Mae Fullwood, a host of nieces and nephews to include Mrs. Leandra Taylor, Mrs. Sabrina Roberts Smith of Cordele, Georgia, and Miss Enika Bryant of East Point, Georgia. A host of cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Evangelist Joel Avery Fullwood Sr., age 58, of 100 Rebecca Court, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Evangelist Joel Avery Fullwood Sr. will be held today, Sunday, September 26th, at 2 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. His pastor, Pastor Mary Office, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. United States Air Force veteran, Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr., age 72, of 1200 Millfield Drive, Stone Mountain, Georgia, formerly of DeSoto, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 21st, at his residence in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Dorothy Carter Mercer of Stone Mountain, Georgia. One beloved son, Mr. Jesse J. Mercer Jr., his beloved sibling, Mr. Johnny D. Mercer of Americus, Georgia, Mrs. Ernestine Cooper of Atlanta, Georgia, Mrs. Alberta Jacobs of Ellenwood, Georgia, and Miss Sarah Mercer of DeSoto, Georgia. One beloved aunt, Mrs. Bernice Hamilton of Macon, Georgia. His beloved sisters-in-law, Mrs. Emma Mercer of Hartford, Connecticut, Miss Carolyn Mercer of New Jersey, Miss Mercedes Carter of Leesburg, Georgia, Miss Willa Seabrooks and her husband, Mr. Joseph Seabrooks of Locust Grove, Georgia, Miss Betty Vereen of Millerton, Connecticut, a host of nieces and nephews, cousins, many friends to include the Sumter high school class of 1966, and the New Covenant Christian Ministry family survives United States Air Force veteran Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr., age 72, of 1200 Muirfield Drive, Stone Mountain, Georgia, formerly of DeSoto, Georgia. The funeral service with military honors for United States Air Force veteran Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr., age 72, will be held Monday, September 27th at 12 noon at the Andersonville National Cemetery in Andersonville, Georgia. Apostle Billy R. Johnson will officiate. The eulogy will be delivered by Pastor Kelvin Ford. The public walk-up visitation for Mr. Jesse James Mercer, United States Air Force veteran, will be held today from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. There will be no viewing at the funeral service. First Lady Mother Mary Etta Pickens Jackson, age 95, of 515 Nathaniel Jackson Boulevard, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, September 20th at her residence in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mrs. Ruby Jean Kitchen of Cordele, Georgia, Deacon Nathaniel Jackson Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Aline Jackson, and Dr. James O. Jackson of Lithonia, Georgia, Mrs. Dorothy Westbrook and her husband, Deacon Odell Westbrook, and Miss Alice Faye Green of Cordele, Georgia. 15 beloved and devoted grandchildren, 29 great-grandchildren, 2 great-great-grandchildren, a beloved sister, Mrs. Emma Burney of Macon, Georgia, a beloved and devoted brother, Mr. Eddie James Pickens of Cordele, Georgia, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, to include Mr. Eddie and Mrs. Janet Bell of Americus, Georgia, and many sorrowing friends, to include Mrs. Hattie Neely of Preston, Georgia, Deacon and Mrs. Dave Williams, Deacon and Mrs. Farris Lewis of Warner Robins, Georgia, Deacon and Mrs. Anthony Thorpe of Lizella, Georgia, and Mother Grace Patrick of Cordele, Georgia, survived. First Lady Mother Mary Etta Pickens Jackson, age 95, of 515 Nathaniel Jackson Boulevard, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for First Lady Mother Mary Etta Pickens Jackson, age 95, will be held Wednesday, September 29th at 12 noon at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, pastor of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, will officiate. The eulogy will be delivered by her beloved son, Dr. James O. Jackson. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. The public walk-up visitation will be Tuesday, September 28th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Danny West, age 63, of 306 First Street, Unadilla, Georgia, died Thursday, September 16th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Miss Tiffany West and Mr. Jeremy West of Unadilla, Georgia. His beloved brothers and sister, Mr. Ray Charles Ingram, Mrs. Iradine Gordon, Miss Ruby Thorpe, Miss Della Daniels, and Miss Mary Sip. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive Mr. Danny West, age 63, of 306 First Street, Unadilla, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Danny West, age 63, will be held Wednesday, September 29th at 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. The burial will follow at the Evergreen City Cemetery in Unadilla, Georgia. The public walk-up visitation will be Tuesday, September 28th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. The Reverend Moses Bernard Maddox, age 55, of 901 Railroad Street, Americus, Georgia, died Wednesday, September 22nd at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus, Georgia. Survivors include his beloved daughter, Miss Brittany Maddox of Jacksonville, Florida, his beloved and devoted mother, Mother Sarah Carson, and her husband, Mr. Willie Carson of Americus, Georgia. His beloved father, Mr. Willie Lamar of Americus, Georgia. His beloved sibling, Miss Tammy Carson of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mr. Kenneth Carson and his wife, Mrs. Shajanka Carson of East Hampton, New Jersey. Mr. Kelvin Carson and Mr. Antonio Carson of Americus, Georgia. Mrs. Mary Coleman and her husband, Mr. Clarence Coleman of Augusta, Georgia. Mrs. Janelle Johnson of Brunswick, Georgia. Miss Erica Thornton and her husband, Mr. Darrell Thornton of Fayetteville, Georgia. Mr. Kerry Smith of Americus, Georgia. Mr. Willie Lamar Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Whitley Lamar of Powder Springs, Georgia. Mr. Courtney Tyson and his wife, Mrs. Jamisha Tyson of Douglasville, Georgia. Mrs. Christy Hardy and her husband, Mr. Avery Hardy of Douglasville, Georgia. Mrs. LaTanya Billingsley of Orlando, Florida. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mr. Andrew Maddox and his wife, Mrs. Catherine Maddox of Augusta, Georgia. Mr. Anthony Maddox of Atlanta, Georgia. And Mrs. Frances Floyd and her husband, Mr. Kenneth Floyd of Warner Robins, Georgia. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. The Reverend Moses Bernard Maddox, age 55, of 901 Railroad Street, Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for the Reverend Moses Bernard Maddox, age 55, will be held Thursday, September 30th at 11 a.m. graveside at Staley Memorial Gardens in Americus, Georgia. The Reverend Kenneth Carson, his beloved brother, will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be Wednesday, September 29th, from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Vernestine Wiggins, age 56, of 101 Coventry Manor Court, Byram, Georgia, died Friday, September 29th at the Houston Medical Center in Warner Robins, Georgia. Survivors include her beloved husband, Mr. Ethrod Stevens of Warner Robins, Georgia. Her loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Christine Wiggins of Warner Robins, Georgia. 3 beloved sons, Mr. Marcus Wiggins and his wife, Mrs. Charmaine Wiggins of McDonald, Georgia. Mr. Damon Turner and his wife, Ms. Najee Turner. Mr. Dakota Turner and his wife, Mrs. Kira Turner of Warner Robins, Georgia. 12 beloved grandchildren. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Johnny Wiggins Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Jeanette Wiggins, Mr. Ernest Wiggins, both of Oglethorpe, Georgia. Her beloved sisters, Minister Dallas Anderson and her husband, Mr. Dominic Anderson, Mrs. Gloria Hunter and her husband, Mr. Rodney Hunter of Warner Robins, Georgia. Miss Beverly Faye Walker of Oglethorpe, Georgia. And Miss Jackie Bell of Forest Park, Georgia. A beloved brother-in-law, Mr. James Jones of Oglethorpe, Georgia. Her beloved uncles, Mr. Eddie B. Kendrick and his wife, Mrs. Rachel Kendrick of Warwick, Georgia. Mr. Joe Wiggins and Mr. Samuel Wiggins and his wife, Mrs. Pearline Wiggins of Orlando, Florida. Her beloved aunts, Mrs. Mary Burroughs of Cordele, Georgia, Miss Martha Warren of Warner Robins, Georgia, Miss Mary Turner and Miss Pauline Wiggins of Orlando, Florida. A host of beloved nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Vernestine Wiggins, age 56, of 101 Coventry Manor Court, Byron, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Vernestine Wiggins, age 56, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. United States Marine Corps veteran, Mr. Tyrone Milner, age 53, of 435 Bay Street, Pineview, Georgia, died Friday, September 24th, at the Veterans Administration Medical Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Survivors include a beloved daughter, Miss Kennedy T. Milner, and her mother, Dr. Sabrina Chambers. His beloved sibling, Miss Nell Fields, Miss Linda Miller, Mr. Tiger Milner and his wife, Mrs. Christine Milner, Mr. J.B. Milner and his wife, Mrs. Tangela Milner, Mr. Patrick Milner and his wife, Mrs. Gwendolyn Milner, and Miss Felicia Cheese, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. United States Marine Corps veteran, Mr. Tyrone Milner, age 53, of 435 Bay Street, Pineview, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Marine Corps veteran, Mr. Tyrone Milner, age 53, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Diana are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. And now for an out-of-town funeral announcement. Mrs. Ann Harris Craddock of Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, September 22nd, 2021 in New York, New York. The funeral service for Mrs. Ann Harris Craddock are incomplete. The Owens Funeral Home of New York, New York will have charge of arrangements. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And now for dedication. Happy 14th wedding anniversary to Mr. Scotty and Miss Shakiva Grant, who are celebrating their anniversary. Dedication requested by their beloved son, Christian, their mother, Mrs. Ida Ruth Bryant, and the entire family. And happy birthday to Ms. Amarni Owens of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, who will celebrate her birthday on Monday, September 27th. And special birthday wishes goes out to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, who's celebrating her 50th birthday on today. Happy birthday to Calandra Wilkerson Parker, who's celebrating her birthday on today, 50th birthday, coming from her beloved son, Jai Wilkerson Parker, her mother, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall, her brother, Mr. Joseph Wilkerson, and the entire family says happy birthday to our beloved Ms. Calandra Wilkerson Parker on today. And friends, I do know that you understand, due to the large number of announcements, we will not be able to get around to our dedications, and you know I had to do that dedication, okay? So we'll not get around to our dedications and announcements on this morning, so please understand, and we will get to those on next Sunday, if the Lord's willing. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Mr. John Lewis Kitchens, Jr., age 89, of 2608 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 21st at the Chris Regional Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. John Lewis Kitchens, Jr. will be held today, Sunday, September 26, 10 a.m., at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. His beloved son-in-law, Minister Dennis Perry, will officiate. Evangelist Joel Avery Fullwood Sr., age 58, of 100 Rebecca Court, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 21st, 2021, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Evangelist Joel Avery Fullwood Sr., age 58, will be held today, Sunday, September 26, at 2 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. His pastor, Pastor Mary Office, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. United States Air Force veteran, Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr., age 72, of 1200 Muirfield Drive, Stone Mountain, Georgia, formerly of DeSoto, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 21st, at his residence in Stone Mountain, Georgia. The funeral service with military honors for United States Air Force veteran Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr. will be held Monday, September 27th at 12 noon at the Rotunda in the Andersonville National Cemetery in Andersonville, Georgia. Apostle Billy R. Johnson will officiate. The eulogy will be delivered by the Reverend Kelvin Ford. The public walk-up visitation for Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr., United States Air Force veteran, will be today from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. First Lady, Mother Mary Etta Pickens Jackson, age 95, of 515 Nathaniel Jackson Boulevard, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, September 20th at her residence in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for First Lady Mother Mary Etta Jackson, age 95, will be held Wednesday, September 29th at 12 noon at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, pastor of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, will officiate. The eulogy will be delivered by her beloved son, Dr. James O. Jackson. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. The public walk-up visitation will be Tuesday, September 28th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. Danny West, age 63, of 306 First Street, Unadilla, Georgia, died Thursday, September 16th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Danny West, age 63, will be held Wednesday, September 29th at 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Portico in Cordele, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. The burial will follow at the Evergreen City Cemetery in Unadilla, Georgia. The public walk-up visitation will be Tuesday, September 28th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. The Reverend Moses Bernard Maddox, age 55, of 901 Railroad Street, Americus, Georgia, died Wednesday, September 22nd at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for the Reverend Moses Bernard Maddox, age 55, will be held Thursday, September 30th at 11 a.m. graveside at Staley Memorial Gardens in Americus, Georgia. His beloved brother, the Reverend Kenneth Carson, will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be Wednesday, September 29th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Vernestine Wiggins, age 56, of 101 Coventry Manor Court, Byram, Georgia, died Friday, September 24th at the Houston Medical Center in Warner Robins, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Vernestine Wiggins, age 56, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The United States Marine Corps veteran, Mr. Tyrone Milner, age 53, of 435 Bay Street, Pineview, Georgia, died Friday, September 24th at the Veteran Administration Medical Center in Atlanta, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Marine Corps veteran, Mr. Tyrone Milner, age 53, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our selection this morning is dedicated to the bereaved family whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mr. Alex Gerard Peterson of Vienna, Georgia. The family of Miss Jessica Warner Lively of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Bridget Nicole Thompson Fullwood of Pitts, Georgia. The family of Miss Margie Levison Green of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. L.C. Butts of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Michael George Johnson of Americus, Georgia. The family of Master Malik Jacoby Smith of Albany, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of Mr. John Lewis Kitchens Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Evangelist Joel Avery Fullwood Sr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of United States Air Force veteran Mr. Jesse James Mercer Sr. of Stone Mountain, Georgia, and DeSoto, Georgia. The family of First Lady Mother Mary Etta Pickens Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Danny West of Unadilla, Georgia. The family of the Reverend Moses Bernard Maddox of Americus, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Ernest Vernestine Wiggins of Warner Robins, Georgia. The family of United States Marine Corps veteran Mr. Tyrone Milner of Pineview, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in our armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, and again goes out to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, who's celebrating her 50th birthday on today, and will be celebrating with me as we work today. This selection goes out to my son, Jai Wilkerson Parker, to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall, and family. This selection goes out to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, to his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, and our grandson, Noble. Selection goes out to my sister, Mrs. Mattie Mae Johnson, better known as Sister Girl, and Mrs. Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Mr. Jim Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. Selection goes out to my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, our pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, and his wife, Sister Kathy Williams, and all of the members as we mourn the passing of our beloved Mrs. Mary Etta Jackson Pickens, gone but not forgotten. Our final selection for this morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.